Capital City Sunday.
The assassination attempt on President Trump comes right before the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The RNC starts tomorrow and runs through Thursday, with many people coming to Wisconsin tonight. President Trump says he is still going to the convention, issuing a statement along with the RNC just hours after the shooting, saying, quote, "President Trump looks forward to joining you all in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate him to serve as the 47th President of the United States. As our party's nominee, President Trump will continue to share his vision to make America great again." Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson is welcoming tens of thousands of people to his city for the convention. He condemned the violence last night, saying, quote, "There is no space, absolutely none, for this sort of violence in America. Not kids, not churchgoers, and not a candidate for President of the United States. I wish Mr. Trump a speedy recovery." I spoke with Cavalier Johnson earlier this week before the shooting at the Trump rally about the Republican National Convention and what it means for the city of Milwaukee. Joining me on the show this morning is Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson. Mayor Johnson, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Thank you.
Mayor Johnson, the convention is set to put a national spotlight on the city of Milwaukee. You were instrumental in bringing the RNC to Milwaukee. What social and economic impacts will the city feel from this event taking place next week?
Yes, first and foremost, I want to give a lot of thanks and kudos to our partners that helped to bring the convention to Milwaukee. Visit Milwaukee, our Visitors and Tourism Bureau, so many other partners in a bipartisan manner worked in order to make this come here. For me, this was a business decision, not a political one. And it was a business decision because I want for large-scale events to choose Milwaukee. So the Republican National Convention, I believe, is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning to other large-scale things coming here. So there's this. I want other big political things like the DNC to come back here. I want other business meetings, sports and entertainment events to choose Milwaukee. And this lays the groundwork, the foundation for us to be in the consciousness, not just across the country, but really around the world for those things to see and to choose Milwaukee.
Mayor Johnson, with some 50,000 Republican delegates and elected officials occupying your city next week, how are Democrats remaining visible? Will there be any efforts on the ground next week to campaign or engage voters for Democrats?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I wanted to make sure we have a safe convention for everybody and a successful convention for everybody. One of the other things that I wanted to make sure that happens is that we have the ability for people in Milwaukee to express their First Amendment rights, including people who would like to demonstrate against the Republican Party platform, against the presumptive nominee on the Republican side. And so my administration has worked to make that happen. I'll continue to go out and use my voice as a sounding board against Republican policies as well. In fact, each and every single morning during the convention, I'll host an early morning press conference talking about the actions that we're taking in the city, and then using also that opportunity as a sounding board to say what Democratic values are in contrast with Republican policies that you'll hear during the convention. So Democrats' voice will be heard during the RNC in Milwaukee. Absolutely.
A lot of criticism from coalitions who are planning to march on the RNC next week, just concerns around the designated protest areas. What are you doing to reassure that those coalitions will still have a voice next week?
Oh, absolutely. First Amendment rights are critically important. I recognize that. I value that. And again, I'm a Democrat in a Democratic city and value those principles and want people who are protesting, who are demonstrating against Republican values or Republican Party platform, rather, to be able to have a voice and a space to be able to do that. That's why my administration is doing the groundwork to make sure they have the space in order to do that. When we had our initial spot for a demonstration area, the folks locally, at least, who are putting on demonstrations, they didn't like that spot too much. The RNC didn't like that spot too much. The business community here in Milwaukee didn't like that spot so much. And so we worked together in order to find a new space that is actually within sight and sound of the convention. You can actually see Pfizer Forum, where Donald Trump and whomever else will take the stage. You can see it from the location. So we have worked with all parties involved, listened to everybody in order to make sure that folks who want to demonstrate against the RNC have the ability to do so. And I value making sure that that was able to happen in Milwaukee during this convention.
President Joe Biden held a call with close to 200 Democratic mayors from across the country earlier this week. You were obviously on that call. What came from that conversation with the president?
Yes, I did join a call earlier this week with President Joe Biden. In fact, my colleague, Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, was on the call as well. The president, first and foremost, he owned up. He owned up to the debate performance that he had a number of days ago. He said it was, a difficult debate. He didn't cast blame on anybody else. He took full responsibility. But then he went on to answer questions from mayors. He engaged with mayors and answered those questions in really exhaustive detail. That's the Joe Biden that I know. That's the Joe Biden that I interact with each and every single time he lands here in Milwaukee at Mitchell International Airport. And I get the chance to see him and talk to him and engage with him. That's what we typically see. And so I already knew that something was going on wrong when he opened his mouth and started speaking during the debate. You could hear that his voice was not what it usually is. I think what it did was reassure not just me, but a number of mayors across the country that he is up to the task, that he will run, that he will be our nominee, and he will win. I believe in him full-heartedly. And like I said, I'm going to Chicago next month as a delegate to the DNC, proudly to vote for Joe Biden. And I think Joe Biden will win in Wisconsin in November and win the election in November as well.
And Mayor Johnson, as you just expressed your support for Biden, what are your thoughts on some Democrats' recent calls for Biden to step out of the race?
I think that those calls are misguided. I really do. I think they're causing more damage than anything else. We should be a united party going into November. Joe Biden participated in a democratic process where he won millions and millions of votes during the primary. He has nearly 3,900 delegates. He's the presumptive nominee on the Democratic side. And like I said, we'll lock up that nomination next month. We'll go on to November and we'll win re-election. I think, though, that folks are calling on the president to step aside because of the debate performance. And if you're thinking about the debate performance, there's a binary choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in this election. So even after that debate performance, remarkably, because Donald Trump is such a flawed candidate, Joe Biden is still the best choice to be president of the United States. And I can tell folks why that is. Because Donald Trump has said what he's going to do. We're going to celebrate 250 years in a couple of years of democracy in the United States. Donald Trump has talked about being a dictator. He's got Project 2025 that lays the groundwork for dictatorship. And the Supreme Court just gave a green light for dictatorship in the United States. Donald Trump has looked out not just for himself, but for his wealthy friends. In fact, his big major policy accomplishment was a tax cut for the very rich. Joe Biden, on the other hand, has got a number of bipartisan accomplishments: the bipartisan infrastructure law, the bipartisan Chips and Science Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, so many other things that have positively benefited the American people. And he's got more in the works in the next term. So remarkably still, even after that debate performance, Joe Biden is still the best person, hands down, to lead the United States as president, and I'm proud to support him.
Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson, once again, we appreciate you for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Next on Capital City Sunday, more from the organizers of the Republican National Convention this week in Milwaukee.